Eric Schneiderman, who is the New York Attorney General, is not accepting a deal where Bank of America and three other major banks would pay out $20 billion for how they have mishandled the servicing of their mortgage operations. Okay, so now they've done many things wrong here, but this is one facet of what they did wrong. They struck a $20 billion deal. The problem is, in that deal, it says that they will then have basically amnesty for all that they have done wrong in regards to those mortgages and the mortgage securities. Now, Schneiderman is leading the effort to say, hey, you know what? That's a bad idea. Why are we giving them blanket amnesty when we didn't even investigate the other fields where they might have done things wrong, where we know almost certainly that they did massive things wrong, right? Now, the rest of the government doesn't like this. And Schneiderman has now led a revolt where Massachusetts, Nevada, and Delaware are all saying, the attorney generals in those places are saying, hey, you know what? I think he's right. I think we need to investigate this fully before we let these major banks off the hook. And of course, the size of the screw up for the mortgage securities is in the hundreds of billions. So, the banks aren't going to agree to a $20 billion payout if they think their liability isn't much, much larger, right? But of course, as usual, here comes the American federal government to help out the banks. So they're putting a world of pressure on Schneiderman. There's a great article in the New York Times about it. They have sent in people from the Justice Department, from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York specifically, and from the Housing and Urban Development to go in and talk to Schneiderman and say, hey, you know what? Come on, man, let's make a deal. So the main guy from HUD is Sean Donovan. He was trying to persuade Schneiderman to make sure that they get the deal, and they use the same exact language as the Justice Department did. They say, well, you know, it's not that we care about the banks. It's that the homeowners are suffering every day and you're holding it up. We need to get relief to those homeowners right away. That is our only concern. It's funny how they've all have the same exact message, all those different departments that are trying to get the one guy fighting the banks to stop fighting the banks. But it's for the homeowners. But we find out what their real motivation is when we see Catherine Wild, member of the board of Federal Reserve Bank of New York, talk to Schneiderman. And she says that her interaction with him was not unpleasant. Others describe it as very unpleasant. Basically, they sent her in to yell at him at a funeral. Former governor of New York had died. He's coming out of the funeral, and she accosts him. So what's her motivation? Well, she's on the record. Here's what she had to say, quote, "It is of concern to the industry that instead of trying to facilitate resolving these issues, you seem to be throwing a wrench into it. Wall Street is our Main Street. Love them or hate them. They are important, and we have to make sure we are doing everything we can to support them, unless they're doing something indefensible." And there we have it. That's the real answer. Okay, that's not talking about homeowners. That's talking about the industry and how important Wall Street is and how the government's job is to help support them, unless they're doing something indefensible, which is, by the way, exactly what this is about. That's why Schneiderman is holding it up, because it's indefensible that they robbed all these people for all this time. Do you know that in New York, again, Schneiderman's home state, the New York Post did a study where they found out in their little random sampling that of the houses that were being foreclosed, 92% of them did not have proper documentation. So nobody even knows in some of the cases whether the people own the bank actually owned that house, whether they got the mortgage in the right way, whether they were foreclosing on the right house. 92%. Yeah, that's what I would call indefensible. So Schneiderman, let me tell you something, man. Don't listen to any of these clowns from the Obama administration or from anywhere else. They are 100% in league with the banks. Their view is the view of Tim Geithner, which is that as go the banks, goes the economy. That view is totally wrong, and it is designed to get more and more money into the hands of very few corporate executives at those banks, which, by the way, in 2009 and 2010 made record profits and took home record bonuses again. Okay? And that's what they're trying to protect, not the homeowners and not anyone else.